Well, hey everybody, this is Don from Wizard Tower Games. Thanks for tuning into my video tonight. In tonight's video, I want to talk a little bit about the Dungeon Master's job, their goal, what the Dungeon Master's job really is. And I want to talk about rules versus rulings and what the difference between those really are. Don't know how long I'm going to be on live tonight, but we'll wait and see. Now, the dungeon master or game master, as it's now called, is the arbiter of the game. They are the person who runs the Dungeon and Dragons game, and you know the DM or GM, whatever you call him or her. What they basically are there to do is they present the game. They present the scenarios. They play the NPCs, the monsters, and they let the players. A good DM, I'm gonna call him a DM. A good DM allows players to kind of just follow the game as they will, follow the game as they, just takes them where it takes them. And what happens a lot of time, I think, in gaming is you have game masters that make a mistake, and the mistake that they make is they view it as they are, are in some type of adversarial role with the players, and you're not in an adversarial role with the player. As the game master or as the DM, your job is simply to present them sort of like an attorney to the judge. You're presenting them the scenario or to the jury, and then what they end up doing is your players end up taking it where they may. As an example, you may say that your players run into a wooden door in a dungeon, and you hear from the other side of the door what appears like many orcs and goblins arguing. It's up to your players if they want to open the door or try to open it or bang on it or whatnot. If you're a DM, you're not just going to say, well, you could say, well, the door opens because you want them to fight the players, but that would be wrong in my opinion. And so really that's the whole thing with me when it comes to Dungeon and Dragons as a whole is the role of the dungeon master, the game master. What is their job? So that's what we're going to kind of delve into tonight. Now, I mentioned earlier about rules versus rulings. Now, you see a lot of people, especially who play newer versions of D&D, they'll say something like, and I see it all the time in the groups, they'll go, well, what if I want to do this? Or I want to do that as the dungeon master. And I always come in right behind them and I say, well, then do it. And they say, well, where's the rules at for that? And I believe that even though you may be playing, let's say you're playing 5th edition, even though you're playing 5th edition D&D, you still have 1st edition guidelines that I believe that dictate how your game should go. And one of the most important guidelines is written by the man himself, Gary Gygax, in the appendix, in the back of the 1st edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. And I'm paraphrasing here, but basically what Gary Gygax said was, you know what, if you don't like a rule, you can change it. If you want to modify a rule, modify it. Just make sure when you modify or change that rule that you're consistent. And I think that Advanced Dungeons and Dragons rule follows even to today's versions, whether you play 3.5, 4.0, God forbid you play 4.0, or you play 5th edition. Well, how you doing, RPG Grandma? Listening in. Well, thank you for listening in. Much appreciated. So really, if you take a look at that basic rule, then you have to run into, I think, or you have to kind of delve into what is the Dungeon Master's real role with the game. Now, I've played a lot of D&D in the, 46 years I've been playing D&D now. And in my 46 years of playing D&D, I've literally played thousands of games. And I've played under, I'll say dozens of Dungeon Masters, maybe 100 or more. And I've seen all kinds of DMs. I've seen them where they really think that it's a contest, them versus the players, which I firmly disagree with. And if you're watching this, I really would like to hear your opinion on this. Do you think the role of the dungeon master is a me as the dungeon master against you as the players? I'd love to hear it. I'd love to get you guys' opinions on this. But also, you know, I think one of the biggest things is that you also run to is as I ran to other DMs that kind of go the polar opposite of it. They're so paranoid of upsetting a player, they pretty much let the players dictate the game, but also they go ahead and they give the players anything that they want. Michael Stronghold, thanks for tuning in. He says, I think this adversarial DM term is kind of loaded. There are bad DMs that try to kill you or won't let you die. I've had more fun with DMs actively trying to kill me. Yes, and you know what? That's the thing with me, Michael, is I think that I think there is a certain adversarial element to the DM. Like me, I set traps for my players as the DM. I set up encounters for them. I don't set encounters up for them because I want to give them, make something easy for them. The whole point of having an encounter is I'm trying to make it hard on them. And if they die, they die. But the big thing with me is I want to make sure that if they die, it's not because I'm directly trying to kill them. It's just because, you know what? Either the dice suck that night, and I'll tell you what, I've seen guys roll 3, 4, 5 20s in a row, and I've seen guys just roll 1s and 2s 4 or 5 times in a row. But the big important thing to me is I want to make sure that as a DM, I'm just kind of setting the stage for them, Michael. And it is adversarial. Yes, I'm setting bad things in the players' paths. But what I want to make sure is if they do die, for lack of a better word, they die fairly or based on their own stupidity or their group stupidity. RPG Grandma says, no, it's not GM versus player. Yeah, and the thing is, in RPG Grandma, maybe I'll put my opinion this way. I think to a certain extent, there is a little bit of adversarial element to it. Because let's face it, you've been playing D&D long as I have. I'm pretty damn sure. And, when we DM, like I was saying, we set up elements of the game. We set up encounters, we set up traps, we set up good things. We put that magic potion of healing in that chest. But we just don't leave the chest sitting there wide open most of the time for the players. Now, I have to admit, there's been times when the players have been playing really good. They're really into it. They're doing everything that they're trying, and damn it, no matter what, the dice just hate their freaking guts tonight. So I will at times, not a lot, but some DMs will give a mulligan. Like the player rolls a 5 when they're supposed to roll an 8. Well, guess what? The DM rolls that, sees it's a 5. Oh, you passed your roll. Give them a little, what they call a little something, something. But also there's been times where I've you see a potion labeled healing on the wooden shelf, trying to give them a little something because they frankly need it. Michael Stronghold says, agree. I've just seen a lot of younger DMs be so afraid of being adversarial that they cannot create tension. And that's the whole purpose of this video tonight. Real quick, challenge conflict management. Exactly. And then laws of physics, RPG Grandma. Absolutely. But Michael Stronghold brings up the whole impetus of this video is I see more and more players, especially modern players, that, in fact, I'll tell you the incident that happened. A young woman posted in one of the D&D groups that she was new to getting back into D&D. And she said that she had her group together, they were playing, and she gave them an encounter. And the encounter was actually far below level of what the players were. So the players should have very easily handled it. But because of bad dice rolling, one of the players died. Shit happens. The player threw a fit. He wanted his character back. She said, no, you died. I'll let you play an NPC. He got mad, and because the other players were friends of his, but hers also, they said, we're done also, and the game was over. And so she was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm not playing this screwed up game anymore. I'm not playing it anymore. And my advice to her was, I actually dropped her PM. I said, you know what, your players there in that group did you a favor. If that's how they're going to be, let them kick rocks. Go find more players. Go to your local game shops. Do that type of thing. Tragedy hero. Yes, exactly. RPG Grandma. And, I talked earlier about rules versus rulings, because I guess what they were citing to her was they were arguing with her that in the Dungeon Master's Guide, or excuse me, in the Monster Manual, it said number encountered. And I guess she put more than what the average number encountered was. And my response to her was, so what? You know, there's rules that we follow, hardcore rules. But there's also a part of the DM's job where your job is you issue rulings on scenarios and situations. Like, as an example, one that I see happen in my past is, you'll have hold on, I'm real quick, I'll get this comment. My group likes to be challenged. They want risk. Exactly. And the thing is, I notice that's a thing with newer characters versus older characters. I'm seeing more and more newer characters make comments, 5e players making comments that one of the reasons why they don't like OSR or D&D is because they don't want to be killed so quickly. It's so lethal. I don't believe I'll pick on AD&D because that's the one I like to play. I don't believe Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is a lethal game to play. Yes, magic users start off at low hit points. Yes, magic users are very susceptible. Yes, you have to fight and earn what you get. But that was the whole appealing thing about D&D with me. Was what blew my mind about the game was, yes, as a magic user, I could cast spells. But it made sense to me because as a new magic user, I wasn't very good at casting magic. Just like a new fighter, I don't know my sword very well. I need combat to get better. Magic users need to cast spells and get experience points to become better. And I know in the group that's watching this right now, y'all experience, so I'm preaching to the choir, but I just see it so much these days where players get mad because they'll say, well, the DM made a ruling against me. And my argument is so what? Dungeons and Dragons is sort of like the way football used to be. Okay? Not now where they take the micro cam and they can take the millimeters where the football was inside the white line or not. We're talking about 1979 football, 1980 football, where it's out in the weather, the snow's blowing, the mud's being slung, and sometimes the ref has it wrong, but you got to suck it up and deal with the ruling. And if you want to get into rules, that's fine. Then if you're the type of DM that you want to go ahead and you want to play by the letter of the game, then do so. But remember also, within Dungeons and Dragons, there's rules that inhibit you as a DM. There's rules that will make you as a DM, because remember, if your players have to follow the rules by the letter, because you know what, you're all into rules versus rulings, well, then you also need to follow the rules to the letter. And even 5e is problematic in the rules. I'm not a fan of 5e. Develop 5e product, but I'm not a fan of it. And the reason I'm not a fan of it is kind of we go back to that. I like, like RPG Grandma says, my group likes to be challenged. They want risk. And, that's the whole thing with Dungeons and Dragons as a whole. And I think that that's one of the reasons why D&D became so popular so quick, is because people's mind were blown. They were experiencing something where it wasn't like Monopoly or Stratego or Risk, where there was very specific rules for everything. If you had a problem, it was very simple. You opened up the book for Monopoly. Oh, nope, you have to have this to do this. D&D kind of opened up a spectrum of gaming that nobody experienced before. And what that was the idea is, wait a minute here. I don't like that rule in the game. Wait a minute, I can change it. Wait a minute. This game is the game was so open. It allowed players to kind of make their own stuff. Like when I was a young man, we couldn't afford modules. My parents couldn't afford to buy game modules for me. So I was forced to make up my own adventures. We had other kids who were quote unquote richer, and yeah, their parents bought them modules to play and all of that. Not me. I centered on making my own stuff. So I broke out the graph paper and I made my own maps and I made, my own NPC, sheets and all that, because I couldn't afford to buy that stuff as a kid. I was lucky my mom bought me the box set, and it took me like 3 months of lawn mowing to be able to buy the Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, and Monster Manual 1, for AD&D. And so, this whole thing with the way things are now with gaming, I don't think there's anything wrong with the way things are being done right now with gaming. If 5e is your thing, if you like the safety net of 5e, then play it. I always tell people there's no bad edition of Dungeons and Dragons. There's only the edition that you don't like. I like 3.5 also, but AD&D is my jam. RPG Grandma says the Octagon Castle of my childhood. Absolutely. I remember as a kid, my parents bought it was a new like refrigerator, I think is what it was, because it was a real tall box. At least as a kid, I thought it was tall. It might have been, heck, it could have been a washing machine. But we took that box, and I remember we took the box and we laid it flat, and we put blankets in there and everything. And if my parents found out, they would have killed us. But we put candles in there, and we'd sit in there for it had to be a full weekend. We were in there after dark with the candles going and everything. We're playing D&D, and we had we're breaking out like water paint and painting the inside like a dungeon. Michael Stronghold, 3E to 5E is not designed to be modular. Very few out there that I know of in D&D Raw. I simply didn't understand it all. You learn to fill certain things in. And that was one of the big problems with AD&D. I mean, AD&D required, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, 1E required people, I think, to think more. And I think that as D&D, it's like when second edition came along, they patched some of those holes. And then third edition came along in 3.5. And sometimes what they did was sometimes they patched rules or added rules that they needed. And sometimes they attempted, I think, to clarify something. And I think the early days of D&D improvement, when you go to AD&D, the second edition, okay, that was a pretty good logical step. I know a lot of people who think 2E is a lot better than 1E. But then we started getting to 3.5. I think 3.5, they hit that really sweet spot. And then in 4E, we know in my opinion, the abomination that 4E was. But then what they're trying to constantly do is they're constantly trying to, I think they're trying. I think they're just trying to do too much with it. Tabletop Tap Room says, I was about to sell, but I just heard 3.5, so it's goodbye. Funny, Tom. Tom, we're getting into, believe me, you might want to sit down for this one, okay? Michael Stronghold says, personally, I didn't find it to be a problem, but a feature. That's why that particular version is staying power to me. Well, then that's the whole thing here with me. With Dungeons and Dragons, again, I don't think there's any bad version. I think it's just what version you like. There's people out there that love 4E. I don't like it. There's people that love 5E. I'm not a big fan of it. There's people that absolutely despise AD&D 1E, and it's fine to do that. But again, I think also one of the biggest problems online is people tend, because they like it, they demonize anything that is not what they like. And I think that's why you had the schism right now between what they call the OSR and new players. I really don't believe that there's really an OSR. It's not like a club. You don't get a membership card. I should make them actually. But I think more what it is just a mindset of the style of play. My mindset is listen, as a player, you need to start off small. You need to, you want that power. You need to earn that power. I'm not going to give it to you. And I'm not going to create a game where you are automatically given something, because right now players are starting off in 5e, the equivalent of third, fourth, upwards of fifth level AD&D powerful characters. And I think for those who play 5e, and just saying, I think that you're really cheating yourself out of a lot of fun when you don't earn and you start out very weak. Reinventing the wheel, absolutely. Tom says, I don't care if you like 3.5, just know I don't. Yeah, you know what? That's the whole point. I'm not a big fan of 3.5. I will admit, if you take a look at D&D as a whole, And if you said I can't play AD&D back, I had to pick another version of D&D, second edition up. I'd play 3.5. Tom also says, as my Sicilian business partner said, drink what the hell you like. Same for D&D, play what the hell you like. Yeah, play what the hell you like. But you know what? If I'm sitting next to you and I'm drinking, if I'm drinking a Beck's and you're drinking a Miller, I'm not going to knock the fact that you like Miller beer, and don't drink the fact I like Beck's. How's that for an analogy? I missed 4. 4th edition, I largely missed RPG Grandma, but I kind of got into it when a little bit right before 5e crested, and I was not impressed at all. I may have played 3 once. Yeah. See, what I did is I went from AD&D, and when I was playing AD&D, 3.5 was the new jam, and everybody's like, "Oh, get the books! You're gonna love this edition." And like me, instead of playing it first and then buying the books, me, Don, I gotta go whole egg. So I go ahead and I go down and I buy the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Player's Handbook, and the First Monster Manual, and I buy them, and I'm like, "Oh, this is like really alien to me," and I wasn't thrilled with it. Now, once I started playing in it, with exposure, comfort comes. So I started getting a little bit more comfortable with the game as a whole. But one of the problems with newer D&D is that newer D&D pulls the DM's role out from rulings and brings it more into rules. I think 5th edition is a rules lawyer jam. I really do. Michael Strongo says the typical table doesn't take a game far enough to get that far into the game, and I don't blame them. Their XP system was antiquated 20 years ago. Most of are not for campaign play. Well, the thing is, Michael, I mean that's just it. You don't have to when I'm going to pick on AD&D again. AD&D doesn't require campaign play to excel in the game. It just requires engaging in the game. And with AD&D, of course, how do you get experience? You get experience by battling monsters and killing monsters and baddies, and you go ahead and you get it by collecting golden treasure. So the thing is I think what you have is I know a lot of AD&D guys who really get into the campaign play. I never was into the big campaigns of the big mega dungeons. I kind of liked myself, if I was going to play a dungeon and I was doing it for my players, I actually would make very narrow, small, deep dungeons. So you might have a 5-level dungeon, but the dungeon levels are very small. So in one setting, or not one setting, in one Friday night, they could probably get through the first, second level of the dungeon, maybe into the third, depending on what I have in their way. Sorry about that. RPG Heroes, I can see 5e is influenced by 4e. In many ways it is. That right there sold me. Yep. Fast combat, exactly. And then I love 4e for the minion rule, and I like the adventure companion rule. Yes, but also think about this, Tom. One of the beautiful things about D&D is if AD&D or 2nd edition is your jam, you can take that minion rule in 4th edition, implement it into AD&D. That's part of the whole thing about D&D is you go ahead and you implement your own rules. I mean, if you take a look at my original Dungeon Master guide that eventually was stripped out of the binding and punched 3 hole and put it in a 3-ring binder, inserted are pages and new rules, and things are marked out and a new page inserted with new rules. And the DMG is actually now that thick, almost triple thick, because of rule modifications, rule additions, rule clarifications, adding rules, adding things. And this is back before 2E on up. It's just stuff we ran into in the play of the game, like people going, like I had a player go, I want an airship. I want a balloon. I want to be able to battle balloon to balloon like steampunk, two dirigibles. We had to create the rule for it. The whole entire mechanic. It took like 6-7 pages to do. Tom said NPC created by the DM but ran by the player. Yes, I used to do that with AD&D quite a bit, and how I do it is I'd usually have an NPC, if not actively in the game, I'd have an NPC off to the side. And if like someone came in to watch the game, you want to play? Well, I don't have a character rolled up. Here, play this NPC. Or if a character inadvertently died, I'd say, well, why don't you play? I'd take him into the other room and I'd say, listen, why don't you play this NPC? This is how I want this NPC played. This is like kind of like what this NPC is up to. Come back in the room, and now it adds an interesting element because now you got a bunch of players going, well, Tom just went in the back room with Don the DM. He's going to take over this NPC. And they're all looking at Tom like, oh, you're an enemy now? So, a lot of good things. Tom says it's a good rule, and I keep it in the toolbox as well as roll with advantage and roll with disadvantage. Simple rules, easy to use, and keep it in your toolbox. Absolutely. And that's the whole thing, I think, again, when you take a look at the earlier forms of D&D, what was so popular about it? Because we could make our own toolbox. We could change our rules. The problem with 5e is I see it all the time again. People going in 5e, well, I don't understand, there's no rule for that. Well, make one up. Okay, there's no rule for it. I get it. Make one up. And it's just, and I'm not trying to be mean here to anybody who plays 5e, but I think with some, and I'm going to use the word some, not a lot, but I'll say with some 5e players, they almost got this mentality of it's almost drone-like. They hold the book open and they go, but where's the rule? And again, we go back to the AD&D, what the granddad says. What did Granddad Gary say in the back of the Dungeon Master's Guide? If you don't see, and I'm paraphrasing again, you don't see the rule you like, make the rule up yourself. Just be consistent when you use that rule. So if you're going to make it where there's a new combat mechanic, don't make it just for that player. You make it for everybody. Be fair about it. Tom says also companion rules like a wolf rescued by a ranger from a trap and not allowed to follow the ranger. Ref gets to learn to roll with it. Yeah, and that's another thing. It's not only on the players; it's also on the GM or the DM. What the DM has to do is the DM has to understand that, also what happens even in 5e if you, and this is part of what I think makes a good DM. A good DM to me can be playing Dungeons and Dragons and they run into a situation. Maybe the players put them in it. Maybe just the game itself kind of rolls around and puts the DM into a situation where there is no rule for it. Well, that's why you have a pen and paper next to you, because what you do is you on the fly, you make up a new rule. You sit there and you get that rule on the fly and you continue with the game. Michael Stronghold says, it's because 3E plus is systematic. Everything connects in a way that easily breaks the system. AD&D is modular, so it's easier to tweak without greater problems. The culture is different because of that. Yes, I agree with you. But on the same token, in playing 5e, you can still modify the rules, and you can still modify a rule. I understand that it's more modular in that a lot of the rules plug into other rules in other books and everything. But as long as you have the ability to create a new rule, maintain that new rule, when it comes to plugging that new rule using not paraphrase, but when it comes to plugging that new rule into something the other rule was a part of, then it should be easier. But it just takes, I think, more record keeping, being more organized as a player. Whereas with D&D and 5e, and I agree with you, it's very modular. I see what Wizards of the Coast is trying to do here with it. I just think that sadly, I think the thing that threw it off with me was the power gaming when making player characters. That's the thing that threw the entire thing of 5e off. It's not necessarily the mechanic I don't like. It's the fact that players can start off with races and classes that are so over the top. And I know what WotC did is they were kind of catering to the power gamers. I get it. With 5e, they use roll with advantage, which is applying a simple mechanic to a situation you made for a ruling, but for that is the end of it. They seem lost in making rulings and don't know how. Well, again, rules versus rulings. I mean, it's a, I think also AD&D is also, I think, more of a thinking man's or woman's game because it forces you to, and maybe that's for lack of a better word, maybe that's kind of the savagery with the game, is that because it's there's so many rule issues with the game. It forces GMs to think more on their feet, to change things as or on the fly, whereas 5e is more comfortable because the rules are already there. The rules are very well set in 5e. But again, I think, and I think Tom's right, and so is Michael. Both, with like Michael says, AD&D is modular. Whereas I misspoke. I apologize. And 5e is systemic. I get that. RPG Grandma says, I only game 5e raw one session and I changed it big time. Yeah, because what you are is you are more used to an older school style of gaming, older D&D. I don't know what version you play, RPG Grandma. Is it, what version does everybody? Let me ask this question. Everyone in here, what version do you play? Which one do you prefer? Can I ask? I play AD&D when I play D&D. If I'm not playing open worlds, I play AD&D. I play a little bit of BECMI, and I like BECMI just for the simplicity of it. Sometimes just break out just uber simple. Listen, we're going to make one simple little quick adventure. Not in the mood for much of anything tonight. Let's just have a little bit of raw fun. Tom says, so much was ignored in one unit, never harmed the game. We mixed BX with AD&D. Yeah, we did. But also, we also fixed the rules when we ran into them. If it required something on the fly, then it required something on the fly. And also, I kind of argue this point is really, did AD&D really have anything missing per se, or was it just not part of the game yet? Let's face it, this AD&D was created. I bet you could fit in a conference room the amount of people that it took to really put those rules out. And I bet you if you asked Tim Kask, he'd probably confirm probably actually writing the game and making the game and doing was probably 2 or 3 or 4 people. Whereas with 5e, you probably have a couple hundred people who have touched that game. Michael Stronghold says, 1E, 5e Traveler, 2E right now. 5e is sort of against my will, but I know enough to talk about it. Yep. Traveler's a good system, by the way. Tabletop Trapper says, we don't need no stinking BECMI. We have Moldave Classic. No, I like BECMI. I mean, I like Moldave Classic. I mean, that's what I got my teeth broken in on 77, but BECMI, I just kind of liked BECMI. Gary Shelley tried to pack a lot in a dungeon. Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it was, is that I think you had a limited amount of people creating the Dungeon Master's Guide and Player's Handbook, or a limited amount of people that had direct input on the game and actually writing the game and creating it. Whereas, let's face it, once Hasbro took over, they put an entire team on it, and with WotC and everything. And then, now with 5e, they've got creative directors and some, 10 different creative directors, and they got departments, and they got this department and that department. And probably when you look at the Dungeon Master's Guide, like I said, you probably had 4 or 5 people really touching it heavily. You look at the Dungeon Master's Guide, though, for 5e, you probably had a couple hundred people who touched it. So naturally, there is that progression of raw and loose to more tightly packed. And people tend to, when they're loose to a more loose rule set, they tend to naturally fight back against more rigid rule sets. RPG Grandma says, now as GM, I was doing heavily retrofitted backwards a 5e version, which if I go back to that project, I have even more changes to make. I got ideas. You know what? That's the whole thing with the game that I like so much, is ideas. As you're playing, you run to a situation with the rule. I mean, I got an idea to make that different or better that suits me better or my players better. And you jot it down. You put a little asterisk next to the rule in the book. I know it's big sin writing in your books. Tom says, the creative directors were all laid off. Well, that's the thing. I mean, because they're moving to digital. We all know that's coming. Also save on the Christmas bonus for the C-suite. Yeah, 20, what was it? $21 million between those four Yahoos bonus alone. Yeah. I wonder if they poured a little eggnog to the fallen, WotC employees as they're going to the bank to cash their multi-million dollar bonuses. What a bunch of shits. And yes, you can quote me on that. RPG Grandma, but currently we're doing AD&D hybrid. Again, I think 99% of people who play AD&D do an AD&D hybrid. My book is hybrid is the loosest term you can use when it comes to my AD&D or my AD&D game. 5 years long as Shadow Dark. You know what? It I don't know. I mean, I read the Shadow Dark rules, before I had to go grab my daughter. Not a bad system. Not a bad system at all. Uber simplified 5e. I tend to borrow ideas from other game systems. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, boy, I got into GURPS for a little while. Boy, you ought to see how big of an influence GURPS is on my AD&D campaign. Exactly, Tom. Tom, by the way, quack quack, right? Tom knows my joke. AD&D by default is homebrew. Yeah, it is, because the thing is, it forces you to be homebrew. Because if you try to play AD&D by the rules, the letter of the rules, it's going to be chaos. Same RPG Grandma, my AD&D game is the basket. I put all ideas in. Yeah, exactly. I really like the rule for torches and Shadow Dog. Good. Yes, that was a very good rule, and that's actually one that I like a lot. Last game I GM'd was Metamorphosis Alpha, looking to add ideas to that. Ooh, that's a little bit of back in the day RPG Grandma. Good game. That was back in the day. Now, this is something for everybody out here that's watching this. I just got a question for him when it comes to the way you play your D&D. I talked a little earlier about rules versus rulings. When actually I kind of had a quasi rule for that. That's similar. I'm not going to change the rule, my rule in my game for that, but she did a good job on that rule for torches. How do you all handle? What's your guys' opinion on players who want to argue with you over, let's say, a rule? Let's say you make a ruling and they say, well, no, they don't. They break out the book. They break out their knowledge of the Dungeon Master's Guide. They say, well, the rule says this. How do you handle that? Because how I handle this is I make it real simple, and I tell them, I say, well, because although there are rules, I'm the arbiter of those rules. I have to make a determination on those rules. And my ruling currently is this, based on the situation. And I've gotten pushback from players. I've seen players do really stupid things and they end up having their character killed and their character's dead, and they get mad at me like I'm the one who murdered a character. I'm like, you knew what was in the room. I let you know what was in the room. You're the ones being an idiot and thought you draw your sword and run in there, and then the freaking magic user behind you said cast fireball. Get mad at him, not me. Killing my play group with old school for real. Ditto. Yeah, that's the thing. You have to put your foot down, I think, with players. You have to be able to sit there and say no. Just like you have to have the ability to say yes, and you have to be fair with players. And I think that's the big thing with D&D and DMs is, as a DM, are you being fair with your players? As long as you're fair with them and you're consistent with them, I think that you're not doing anyone a disservice. Tabletop Tap Room says, this is why I played BX, which don't have much for rules, nothing to argue about. Almost. Yeah, almost. There's always something players find to argue a DM about. Michael Stronger, if players make more logical ruling suggestion, I'll agree. I can't think of the least time someone tried to pull a book out on me. Or last time, sorry. I don't mind players making rule suggestions. I've gotten some really good ideas while playing the game from players who say, what about this? The problem that I have is and I don't run into it very much anymore, but I used to run into it very early on in D&D, like when AD&D first came out, rules lawyers that would whip out the book. they would go ahead and say, well, I have a copy of the D&D in my backpack, or the DM's guide, excuse me, the DMG in my backpack. Or they would go, um, you know, the DM says, the guide says this when it comes to that. And what you have to be able to do as a DM, I think, is just simply say, I know what you're saying. I know what the book says, but this is the ruling I'm going to have in my game. And sometimes you upset players, sometimes you make them happy, And then the question I always ask players to get all pissy with me is, I say, wait a minute, here, stop. How about if I break a rule in the next encounter, okay, and I give you all the gold immediately. Would you like that? Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, you don't mind it when the rule is in favor of you, the ruling. But when the ruling is in favor of the game itself, you don't like that. And that usually shuts them up. Okay, home so I can chat better. Good. I hate to delay a game for the book to be opened. And that's another thing with me, is that what I like about D&D is, if you're playing a version long enough, you really should have, at least with me, have very little book time involved. Usually what I'll do is I have my own screen custom made, and I have all my tables that I'll commonly use. I know the game well enough, AD&D, that I really don't need to keep consulting the book. Michael Stronghold says, oh yeah, for sure, when we were kids, that would happen all the time. Not really a thing I've encountered in adulthood. Yeah, because I think now most people, they kind of just roll with it. I think the old early days of rules lawyers, people know that that's not really liked even by other players, because rules lawyers hold up the game. They drag the game out. RPG Grammar, so if there's an issue with the table rules, we're up to size, but after session we will discuss. Yeah, that's another thing you can do, is listen, you may not like my idea. Tell you what we'll do is we'll notate it and we'll discuss it after the game. That's another good idea. I also encourage, absolutely, I don't like DMing all the time. I love to be a player. And one of the most favorite things I used to do, I remember when I was younger, when I first got back from overseas, my brother-in-law and me got really heavily into D&D with each other. And we played D&D one-on-one a lot, where I'd have like 3 characters and he played the DM. And that's some of the best days I've ever had playing D&D, is with my brother-in-law, James. Just because he was one of these real creative DMs. I mean, he was really creative, and storylines woven into it really weirdly, and puzzle games where you had like solve issues and solve problems and things to get to it. Very, very good DM is what he was. RPG, thus when someone else does, I demonstrate more backing of their decisions. Yes. You know what? As a player, DMs have made decisions I didn't like. I just roll with it because it's part of the game. You know what? That's part of it. No one will DM 1E for me, so that's why I have a 5E game too. Oh man, that's bum. That kind of sucks. One player every session casts Fireball. I'd open the book and check the spell listing, and then plan how we're to set a Fireball to 6 months. One time a week, I'm on the screen. Yeah, Fireball. Every player wants it. Even if I would do it differently myself. Very good decision, but yeah. Thus, when someone else does, I demonstrate percent back in decisions, even if I would. Exactly, because the thing is as a player, you have to have respect for the DM. I know that I'm not at the very onset of the game when I sit down as a player. I know that I'm not going to agree with that GM or that DM's rulings all the time, but I'll respect it. If it's a big one in my book, I'll write it down and I'll notate it, and I'll talk to the DM after and say, well, hey, remember this, my experience or whatnot. And sometimes they say, well, there's a reason for it. They explain it like, oh, I didn't know that. But most of the time I just let it roll off the shoulders. Just a game. They're to have fun. Every campaign you played had a magic user. Yeah. And that's a funny thing, like even in my games with my brother-in-law, James, I had a magic user. If I was allowed to have 3 characters, why not? Fighter, fighter, or excuse me, a fighter magic user, a cleric, and a fighter. I wouldn't do a thief or anything like that. Those are usually my 3 classes. And my fighter magic user is usually half elf. I don't like half races anymore, and I don't like multi-classing. Not a fan of multi-classing anymore. RPG Grandma says, so that fosters trust and respect as well as good gaming culture. Yeah. When especially if you're the regular DM at the table and everybody knows that you're the normal, you're the DM, and you're playing the game and you're not arguing one bit with the DM, I think what you do is you set an example for other players. Um, or even as a player, I've seen other players argue with the DM, and I've stepped up for the DM. I've argued for the DM, and basically said, no, you're wrong. Let's get the game going. Come on, it's not a big deal. Let's move on, because I just don't want to get into this back and forth with the DM because some micro rule was violated in some player's book, or something didn't go absolutely the way they wanted, so they're throwing a hissy fit at the table. Um, I have to ask also everybody, anyone can say what the worst thing they ever seen happen in a D&D game, ever? Anyone? Because the worst thing I ever seen, I'm talking about players throwing a fit. The worst thing I ever saw at a gaming table was we were playing D&D, advanced D&D, and we had this jerk at the table, and he was arguing about everything. And I mean, he was arguing about everything. And he got so frustrated, he took his player's handbook, stood up, screamed, F all you guys, I'm done playing this game, and literally took his player's handbook and ripped half the interior out, threw it on the floor, and then took the remaining bit, and there was a trash bin across the room, and threw it at the trash bin and said, you guys can take this game and shove it up here, and he storms out the front door. And I'm not joking. Everybody just kind of stood there for a minute looking around, and we just kept playing. What are you going to do? RPG Grandma says, so the Metamorphosis Alpha game, the game took trust, but no one but myself knew the rules, and the 1E version I used had missing rules. The players trusted me to be fair. You got to have fairness and you got to be known for fairness if you're going to maintain players also. Because I think that once players realize as a DM that you're dishonest with them, or you're going to play games with them, like be unfair, they're not going to want anything to do with you. As a matter of fact, in the role-playing game that I'm getting ready to release, Open Worlds, I have some advice to future DMs who play the game. And the number one rule is always be fair and be known to be fair, and you'll keep players. I see all the time dungeon masters, or not all the time, should I say, but I see dungeon masters will occasionally gripe because they lose players. And when I see dungeon masters lose players, sometimes I'll ask them on Facebook, so, but what have you done to lose players? And 99% of the time they'll come back aggressively. Who are you? You don't know my game, blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, yep, I know exactly what kind of DM you are. I asked you a simple question and you're acting like a child. You just told me in your response to me everything I didn't know why you don't have players. Because if you're acting that way over somebody just asking a simple question, I can imagine challenge you in a game. Wow. To judge fair, yes, that's part of the DM's job, is to judge fairly, be fair, interpret the rules properly, but also not properly, interpret them fairly. That's the big thing. RPG Graham says, in the past, too much rule lowering is the quickest way for said player to instantly that session become the DM. In the past, too much rule lowering is the quickest way for said player to instant that session becomes the DM. RPG Grandma, can you clarify that, please? I'm a little bit not sure what you meant by that. I'm sorry. Tabletop Taproom says, worst thing I ever saw was a DM smirking because we could not figure out the puzzle for an hour and a half. Session ended, and two of us looked up the module, read the puzzle for the next game. Ooh, naughty Tom. Jeez. Thanks for volunteering. You got the rest of the adventure after potty break. Yep, exactly. Can you imagine 1.5 hour delay? That's the thing. That's where some DMs take it adversarial. It's me versus the players. No, it's not. You're not. You're part of the game, but you're not part of the game that you obviously think you are. Yeah. I admit there's been many times that I've had a carefully crafted little thing that I was very proud of, and for some reason the players blew past it like it was nothing. I'm like, oh, darn it. And yeah, my DM's ego has been dented a few times by good playing by the players, but that's actually pretty cool to see happen. If it's Tomb of Horrors, yeah. Tomb of Horrors is a nasty flicking module. Holy cow, that's a nasty module to play. That's too much. I'll tell you what, Tomb of Horrors, that's a, you know, I know why Gary, I mean, it's well known knowledge why Gary went ahead and did it, but, you know, wow, when it comes to that module. RPG Grant says you need to give them different avenues to solve puzzles. Yes, and that's the thing. I mean, you can throw a puzzle, I believe, at characters. Like, if you really want to be a jerk, you can say, you have to interpret these letters, and you can just throw something together and make up some script. But as a DM, if there's not something on the back end before they ran into that, where they can go ahead and maybe learn about the interpretation of those letters, then what are you doing as a DM? I mean, any DM can make impossible puzzles. That's not a big deal. Any DM can make impossible scenarios. It doesn't make you a good DM. A good DM, yeah, you may have that puzzle that they run into, that door that requires, maybe like I was saying, maybe there's 6 symbols they have to interpret or move. There's 6 blocks that are symbols, and they have to move them in a certain way to get the door open. Yeah, 6 symbols. There's probably what, 500,000 permutations to that. But a real good DM will, somewhere at the back end before they run into that, they'll give them ways of solving it. That way, if they're astute and they pay attention, they'll be able to go ahead and solve that problem. RPG Grandma says, I bought Tomb of Horrors 2E and 5E for the hobby to torture everyone down with that. I do not know how 2E and 5E Tomb of Horrors is. I don't know if it is true to the original. I don't know if it's expanded. I don't know if it's been made easy. I just know about the original Tomb of Horrors. In fact, I have 2 copies of it right there. Michael Starker, so much personality has come out of role playing while being stumped. My favorite big bad of my setting was creating an interpersonal conflict in the tomb. You got to let that play out. That's my take anyway. Well, I mean, if there's conflict, if there's interpersonal conflict between players, let it play out. It's like in real life. If every one of us was in an adventuring party in a dungeon, somewhere in this, we're going to argue. Somewhere, me and Tom's going to want to, we're going to argue with each other. Me and RPG Grandma are going to sit there and get mad at each other. Interpersonal conflict in a game is a good thing. I like seeing players, as long as they keep it into the game. If they're really role playing the game well, that's what I want to see. I want to see them get upset at each other, because I want to see how that pans out. I even had one time where a cleric refused to heal one of the members of the party because he was a real jerk to her. I mean, he was a jerk to her during the game. Real condescending, real insulting. And I remember looking at her. She one time just leaned back and I thought to myself, oh, dude, you don't know what you're doing. And the look on her face was, I got your number. You're going to need me. You're going to need this cleric. And sure as hell, went down, and yeah, he was dying, and she's like, I'm not healing him. He ended up dying, and he ended up quitting the game. As a matter of fact, hey, I can't make her heal you. He kept it, make her heal me. Tell her to heal me. Tell her to heal me. It's like, I'm the DM. I can't make her do jack shit, buddy. And she's like, no, he was a jerk to me. She was right. Hold on a second. Let me catch up here. Is exasperated by being stumped in a puzzle. The DM just helped them. No real drama would have occurred. Yes, but that's the thing is, did the DM help them before they ran into the puzzle? Were there things implemented earlier in that game that would have helped them, but they left it alone? Maybe there was a scroll sitting on a table that had, I don't know, maybe a map with the clue of what it is. Sorry, my dog Winnie's in here. A map with the symbols on it or some way. Was there markings in the hallway in a certain order that if they would have paid attention, they saw. If the DM was helping them along the way and it was due to the player's ignorance, then it's the player's fault. But if the DM just throws it at them and says, figure it out, and they're sitting there, like Tom said, for an hour and a half, winky wonking, trying to figure the damn thing out, that's unfair. RPG Grandma says throwing a tantrum at her current table will result in said individual getting decentralisted with a taser, a canine, maybe pepper spray handgun. RPG Grandma, I want to come to your table and play one day. I really do. I bet you were having some really interesting. I could just see it. Oh, you're being an asshole? Brack out taser, zap. Better yet, got another good one for you. Speaking of dogs, we had a game one time when, and I'm not joking, where everybody, the game idea was, and this is hilarious. Everybody put a dog shock collar on their wrist, and the DM had the shocker. And what would happen is if you rolled a 1, you got a zap. Did that one time. I was when I was in the military. It was fun. I got zapped a couple times. I get that some players don't like being stuck by truly treasured on both sides of the table. If it's fair, I have no problem with players getting stuck. Because I'll use me as the DM guinea pig. If I have a proverbial dead end where they gotta solve a puzzle, I will guarantee you back before that dead end, there were many clues that would have helped them if they would have paid attention. And I don't make the clues oblique or hard to find. I mean, they're fairly in the open. Tabletop Tapper says maybe don't play with jerks should be a rule. But the problem is, Tom, is how do you know the person's a jerk until you start playing with them? RPG Grandma says puzzle like a murder mystery needs clues. Yes. And that's the whole thing. You suffice nothing for the games, or you do nothing for the game if you don't give the players the tools they need. Again, players don't follow it. It's on the players, it's on them, not on the GM. Michael Stronghold says, well, it's the Tomb of Horrors, so I'm not sure if they got the clue on the floor, but that's about it, I think. In that case, you are pure referee. Tomb of Horrors, like I said, that's just a nasty game to begin with. And that module, that's a proud TPK manufactured game. Gygax made it to TPK. That's exactly what he designed it for. And he achieved it. Which is a place like B. Yep. Tabletop Tapper said I had a low tolerance for that game as a 3.5, and the DM was a bit of a jerk, so I was willing to cheat and read the puzzle in the module. But the thing is, if you actually probably looked at the module, there were probably clues in that module that the GM was probably leaving out. I don't know of any game module in D&D that has a puzzle and there's not something within the game module in back of that puzzle that is there to help you solve the puzzle. So what your GM was doing is she was perfectly leaving out important aspects of the game. And I know people have done that. And that's total bullshit when DMs do that, because all you're doing is being a jerk to your players. It's great when your players collect the info and at the end they can figure out and get through the door. If you think it's too easy for them, then put something on the other side of the door, make it a little bit harder on them. Put something before the door. But don't cheat your players. That's when you're going to one day be sitting at an empty table and griping because nobody wants to play the game with you. RPG Grammar, if you don't do that, then dice roll against challenge numbers or even an old Games Workshop research chart. Yes, agreed. Absolutely. A little bit of creative thinking goes a long way. Shock collar, we got those tools. Yeah, no, we did. They dog shock collar, tied it on your wrist. And if you rolled a 1 during the game and any of your dice, you got a zap by the DM. And those were the ones that had the little number where they could go from 0-1 to 99 in power. I know that bastard used 99 on me. Do what you got to do to get to the end of the evening and don't go back. Well, that's the whole thing with being a player. When I'm playing D&D, I'm going to get creative on a GM. I'm going to get creative. And I'll tell you what, when you tell me I'm just going to go the proverbial dungeon crawl. If I'm in town and I got to go shop for provisions, you may look at me and go, why are you wanting to buy that weird stuff? Trust me, if I know what I'm going to be going into a dungeon, I got my kit all crafted up. I know damn well what I'm buying before I go in that dungeon. You better make sure that I'm out of stock on a few things, because I'll play that scenario big time. Just like if I'm going the adventure of the ruined castle, or if I got to go adventure into whatever, not a problem. I'll hook myself up. because I got workarounds for a lot of stuff. I got 47 years of D&D under my belt. Tabletop Tapper, I don't want the game to drag. Let's move things on. And there's where a good DM comes into play. A good DM, I think, also can look at this table and he can read it or she can read it. If you got players, and I'm talking about body language, a good one is if you got players doing this. Get moving, do something, get them engaged, because you got a player that is seriously bored. And when it comes to D&D, there is no reason why your players need to be bored. Your players should be on their toes constantly. Your players should be engaging each other constantly. Your players should be engaging the game constantly. And you should never see anything like this. The other thing is, this little guy, for all of you out there, sorry, not at the table. Get mad all you want. No, absolutely not. Now, I don't mind, having it like sitting beside you and whatnot, because, just in case, like I got a wife and I got daughters, and, I want to be able, if I'm at my friend's house and something major happens, my wife, if I told my wife I was going over Tom and Tammy's house to play D&D, she would not call me unless it was an emergency. So I don't mind that type of thing. But people to get on their phones during the game, no, you got no reason to be on your playing Angry Birds while you're playing D&D. But also think about it like this. If you got players who are constantly getting on their phones while you're playing D&D, then you might have a problem as a DM because you're not engaging your players good enough. RPG Grandma says, well, I watched some 5e players try Tomb of Horrors and they just didn't get it, but I played the 5e version of another Deadly module recently. We survived far better than other 5e players because we approached 1e style and not 5e superhero style. That's right. And I'm willing to bet, RPG Grandma, another way that you approached it was you thought before you acted. You really thought the problem out. And again, getting back to AD&D, I think that's one of the things that AD&D top players, because at the very beginning, you did not have the tools to do your job. You did not. As a first or second level player, I did not have the tools that I needed to complete the average adventure. So I had to use this. I had to think. I had to think about the game. I had to think about my actions. I had to think about, before taking action, I had to formulate logical thought, instead of just automatically being given the tools going, today I'll draw my +4 Vorpal Sword of Demon Destruction and I'll run into the room and kill the dragon. Oh, nice play. Second level, you can do that? Yes, you can. I know I'm being a jerk here, but in a way I'm not. Have 2 mooks walk through the door with guns. Okay, real quick. Tom, guns are not allowed in my D&D campaign. Gunpowder weapons are, but you're going to have to, and you cannot use flintlock and all that. You're going to have to demonstrate how'd you make gunpowder? How'd you make that work? Lots of people claim the old modules are too deadly for 5e, which is bizarre. Actually, I'm with you on this, RPG Grandma, because the thing with the older modules is what I liked about a lot of the modules was that as long as you use common sense and you think before you act, they were actually pretty easy to get through, i.e. not saying Tomb of Horrors was or some other ones. But I just think, speaking of modules, while I'm yapping on, everybody, please answer this. I really want to know from you. If you are a player of whatever version, do you have a favorite module? If so, what edition and what is the module that's your favorite? Please, I would love to know it. I'm going to give you mine real quick, and I know you all are going to look at me going, huh? Isle of Dread. God, I just love that. I think maybe because that was the first module I was able to buy myself. I still have it. RPG Grandma, 1E being deadly to 5E. RPG Grandma, passive perception takes a lot of the challenge from old module. Yes, it does. It does. And that's why it makes playing the older modules a lot easier. And that's why I'm not a fan of passive perception. I'm not. I get the theory behind it. I get the idea of why they did it. In open worlds, I have a form of passive perception, but it's really, really, really watered down. Really watered down. RPG Grandma says all the perks won't save 5e PC if they try to power through certain things. Depending on the game module, I agree fully with the RPG Grandma. Plus the fact that you have tasers, handcuffs, and mace. You know what? If I ever come to your house to play D&D, you're going to hear a very common term out of me. You're going to hear me go, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Tabletop Tap Room is a bit of advice from Gaslight RPG when players are bored to have two mooks walk through the door with guns. I have never played the Gaslight RPG. And this is kind of funny that you mentioned the word gaslight. I am not joking. It's funny you mentioned gaslight. And the reason why I say it's funny that you mentioned gaslight, Tom, is I have actually in development right now, and my wife will make an attest to this. I had a board game developed called Gaslight. It takes place in Victorian England. I lost my rules for it. I wrote them all out and I couldn't find them forever. I ran across my rules. We got handwritten rules the other day. So I made my folder, my project folder for them, Gaslight board game, and doing the board game. Oh my God, this is such a cool board game. It takes place in Victorian England. And yeah, I'm going to yap for a second. It's funny you mentioned it because, like I said, I lost it years ago. And I just so happened I was digging through boxes a few days ago. And you asked my wife, Tina, she came up from work and I was acting like a little school kid who won the lottery. I was like, I found my rules. My wife's looking at me like, oh God, he must have found something he wrote years and years ago to be that happy again. N1 Against the Cult of the Reptile God. Never played it. Never have played it. Tabletop Tap Room, Keep of the Borderlands, and B10 Knights Dark Terror. I have played both. Keep of the Borderlands is such a classically good game module. B10, I had it. I went through it, but I never played it, and I regret not playing it. And by guess, I mean the one by Buck Surdu. Yeah, I figured that's one you meant. I've never played it. Never have. RPG Grandma says, I'm oddly fond of Keep. You know what? That's the thing, though. I notice a lot of people Keep on the Borderlands. And where was Keep of the Borderlands at? Included in. It harkens back just, RPG Grandma, bless you. Hold on a minute. Guys, right here. Temple of the Frog in the supplement. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I'll tell you another really cool module that's out there. The Shire. What was it called? Something the Shire. I can't remember it. Really fun module. The Power of a Bundled Module. Yes, sir. Isle of Dread is fun. I liked that was the thing because it was. I think what holds a special thing again in my heart is, my mom bought me my first box set, Christmas of '77. I didn't know what it was. I never even heard of D&D before that. And my buddy Lance borrowed it because we thought it was. My mom bought it. She thought it was like a coloring art set because I was really into art and everything. And I got this thing, man, it contained dice and a crayon. What the hell had dice and a crayon for? And what do you mean role-playing game? What the hell's a role-playing game? Games have boards and figures and tokens. And my buddy Lance one day was over. He's like, can I borrow that and go read it? And I remember him calling me up. He's like, Don, tomorrow at school, I'm bringing it with me. You got to check this out. I'm like, what? Remember going to school with me. He's like, Don, this is a role-playing game, man. You can be like a magic user and cast spells and you fight goblins. And I'm like, huh? I'm a big fan of Tolkien. I was like, wait, fight goblins? Can I be a halfling? No, but you can cast spells. And Lance got me kind of like, Lance is the one who introduced me to RPGs. Isle of Dread was fun. Yeah, it's just a good classic game. But yeah, the Isle of Dread, we weren't rich. And, I mowed lawns to get the money for my AD&D manuals. When playing D&D, I became really obsessed with it. And when AD&D was out, I was like, I can't afford this. I mowed lawns, but even like during Christmas, for some reason, although we never had a bad Christmas, my mom and dad always bought us things. I was also in the plastic model building, so I don't know if it was just me asking for models over modules or what, but my mom would usually, my dad would get me plastic models to build. But um, Isle of Dread was my first module I bought with my own my first module period that I ever had, and I bought with my own money. It was just something special to me. It's always had kind of a special thing. Gunther the Mad, thank you very much for coming into my live here tonight. I4, I5, that's seriously running BX. Gunther, again, thank you for coming in here. BX, what a great game system. You know, let me ask you a question, Gunther. I'm not expecting your age. Would you classify yourself as more of an older guy like us or older gal? Or are you a newer, younger player that's just into BX? I'm really curious about it. RPG Grandma says Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is basically the meat grinder game. We all went again and again. Yes, we all did. You know, and the thing is, it was always new. You know, even though you knew what was coming, it was always new. D&D put a crimp in my arcade money. Yeah, it did. Absolutely, it did. 53. Gunther, I am 56, so we're right in the same lane of age. So yeah, really cool that you play BX. There's one thing that I want to let everybody know right now that I want to do. I was supposed to start it up in December with Eric Tenkar and Tom Verrolt. Is I signed up for a virtual way to play D&D online, and I really want to get that fired up here in February. And I'd like to find 2 or 3 other players to maybe dedicate just one night a month, just for a couple hours to have a little light fun. And I was going to, it'll be a chance also to play test out some games for Wizard Tower Games. And also, I thought about just playing some good old fashioned D&D, like get just some good old basic, good fun stuff. If you're wanting to do it, drop me a PM on Facebook, either through Wizard Tower Games or through Don somewhere on my Facebook. I'd love to have a couple more people join the game. I got to kind of shake Eric's tree and go, hey, we're going to get back into that. Tom, sorry, you're not getting out of it. You already agreed to do it. Tabletop Tap Room, Lost City, and BX kind of qualified as a mega dungeon. Yeah, it did. And also, I remember my first true mega dungeon that I really got into when I was playing AD&D is Undermountain. Wow. Talk about a mega dungeon, and one that I started it, and then my brother-in-law borrowed it, and my brother-in-law was like, hey, Don, you know what? I want to run this, man. So actually it was me, and I actually got my brother Raymond involved in it. My brother Ray passed away, you know, God, 20 years ago. Can't believe it's that long, but he got involved in it as a player. I was involved in it. And one of my brother-in-law's neighbor kids got involved in it, and we played Ruins of Undermountain. Talk about a wild, wild ride. Because again, my brother-in-law James he was really good DM. RPG Grandma says there are a lot of good modules. Lost City's a classic. Exactly. I might be able to play. RPG Grandma, you message me. We'll figure out a date and time between everybody. I'm not just going to say this is the day. I'm going to get with everybody involved, and maybe we can just, again, nothing crazy, nothing heavy, just one evening a week, or a month, you know, one night a month. Might be a Thursday, might be a Wednesday, whenever it's good for people. 2-3 hours max. Looking to have fun, looking not to. And I got a message by someone's significant other. Tammy, you are more than welcome to play. Absolutely, you automatically have a spot. Lost City can be expanded so easily too. Yes, it can. And that's another thing I liked about some of the older modules is they were so easy to add on to. And like some of the modules that were multi-part, what I liked about some of the modules that were multi-part is if you went ahead and you wanted to expand on them, but you didn't want to buy the other modules, make up something towards the end of it. Do it that way. Michael Stronghold says, "Are successful game. I love that adventure a lot. Could ever run through. I think the survivors are A2 now." So, how long you been running that game, Michael? Is that a game that you've been running consistently, or is that just a game you've been running part-time off and on for a few years? Um, but yeah. Oh, wow, hour and 15 minutes, 2 years. Hour and 15 minutes already going through this. Uh, RPG Grandma says old modules often had enough info to launch a setting from. Yes, they did. Just and that's why when I do modules, there's a couple people have my modules in here. One of my modules is like with Haunted Ruins. When I design a module, I really want that module to have so much information, so much information. Maybe you don't use it all because when you play it, if you play it again, I want you to be able to incorporate new things into it. That way, like a lot of the older game modules, once you play it, you put it on a shelf because you've already played it with your players. I want my modules to have that replayability factor at least 2 to 3 times. I really want to see people every week. Nice. It's cool that you have a weekly game. That is something that I like to see because I remember we used to have a weekly game Fridays and Saturday nights. Every Friday night, every Saturday night, period. Only time is if something really serious happened or if there was like a birthday or something like that that people couldn't go to. I love Professor Dungeon Master's videos on the Caves of Carnage. He has such good ideas. Professor Dungeon Master is a hell of a good knowledge resource. He's really good. And he's, I admit when I first heard of him, I was like, oh, Professor Dungeon Master. Oh, gee. No, I watched his stuff. He has right. He knows his stuff really well. I mean, like a professor should. I mean, and he's a real cool guy. I've never met him, but from everything I've heard about him, he's a real cool, legitimate OG gamer also. Hopefully I'm going to run into him. I'm hoping at GaryCon. And yes, we're going to be at GaryCon. Me and my wife, Tina, we're going to have a Wizard Tower Games booth. So swing on by, say hello. Haunted Ruins is infomercial where the guy says, but wait, there's more. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. There actually is more. The new second part of that module is actually coming out in March. I'll give you a preview copy to do a review on. Michael T134 took about a year and a half. Sounds right. Weekly? If you're playing it weekly? Yeah. And that's another thing I liked about a lot of these modules. Depending how long you played per session, with a lot of these modules, they had that playability factor where it took a while to get through them, and your players weren't bored. Your players are having fun. It's his shtick because he's a college professor. Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, I wasn't knocking the guy. What I meant is when I first heard someone call himself Professor Dungeon Master, I was like, oh, gee, a know-it-all. No, he is a know-it-all when it comes to D&D. The guy really knows his stuff. I can't wait to meet him. I hope I meet him, and I want to shake his hand and like to have a little quick chat with him. There's people that deserve the label that they have, and Professor Dungeon Master is one of them. He does know his stuff. Absolutely. He's one of the people in our community, I think, that really deserves a lot of respect. And if he happens to watch this video, this is just my suggestion to you, Professor Dungeon Master. You should write a book. I'm writing a book, but my book is about my experience in dealing with another game company and about how I met them and such. Tom and Eric Tenkar from Tenkar's Tavern knows about it. Matter of fact, they're having some input writing the forward and the prologue to it. But yeah, I'd love to see him write a book. I think that he would write a really good one. Michael Stronghold says, yeah, filled out the area around it with Verbank, and not all the time was spent in the temple, but yeah, it was a beast. You have to run it like an evil city, not a dungeon. Yes, and that's the cool thing is, I really like it when, how do I want to put this? I really like it when a setting like a dungeon, like it's going to be a dungeon, but it feels, but it's not a dungeon, like I'm not trying to, I'm advertising, but I'm not advertising, but it's like we have a game module coming out called 6 Simple Levels. The number 6 simple levels. They're just 6 simple levels. And it kind of odes to, it's not Tomb of Horrors. It's not crazy like that, but it's designed to test players. And they're very simple levels, but they're going to require, I doubt 5e likers will enjoy it much if you're a true 5e gamer. I hate to say it, even though I'm talking about Wizard Tower products, because the whole purpose of 6 simple levels is it really harkens back to the day where it's not so much lethal because of what's walking around in there carrying axes and swords. The lethality comes from if you're not going to be a thinking gamer. You really need to walk into it understanding that you're going to be tested if you're a warrior, you're going to be tested if you're a magic user, but also your gray matter is going to be tested because it's going to require thinking, but also cooperation among the players. So if you have any wild cards in your group or people that say, you know what, I do it my way and it's only my way because I'm, Billy Bob Bonk the Warrior. Well, Billy Bob Bonk the Warrior, you're not going to have a good time in the adventure. Tabletop Tap Room says he can read WotC like a book. Yes, he can. You know what? I can read WotC like a book. You know what? I'm gonna read my entire book I wrote about Wizards of the Coast. There was this company that had a really good idea. Then they screwed it up. The end. See? There it is. Wizards of the Coast. Oh, that'd be a bestseller. I'll put that in writing. Hank from Runehammer also gives out good ideas, advice, and creativity taping ideas. Do me a favor, everybody. I'm all for sharing the love here. Okay, I am not the be all end all. I have a lot of experience playing D&D, but I can learn, and I'm always for learning. When this video is posted, if you guys know of any other people like Runehammer, go down in the comments and just link their channels. And what I will do is I will go ahead and do another video where I talk about other YouTubers out there, and let's see if we can get these people some followers. Let's go ahead and I'll make a video and I'll do a little blurb about each one of these guys, little roving advertisement. That way people can watch it and go, oh, and go over to Runehammer or go over to Professor Dungeon Master and like and sub their channel. Tom from Tabletop Tap Room is firing up a new thing with his channel. I'm not going to say it, Tom. I'm going to let you go ahead and tell people on your channel. Just go to Tom over at Tabletop Tap Room. He's already doing a couple of videos on it. Hilarious. Tom, also, you look good in a freaking suit and tie, my friend. You look pretty damn snazzy. This is about as snazzy as I get. Wait till you see my Hawaiian shirt at GaryCon. You're going to like that. But at any rate, yeah, drop links to those that you think are really good vloggers for D&D in the comments section here, and I will make a special video. I'll go to each one of their channels, I'll watch a little bit, and I'll do a little blurb about them, and I'll link to their channel. I'll just make maybe a 15, 20-minute video, and each person will get 1 or 2 minutes of me talking about them with links. Let's see if we can get some people some likes and follows. You know what I mean? I'm all for that. Sounds awesome. Yep, teamwork is a thing good in D&D game. You know what? That's right. And that's why I do this type of stuff also. We've been doing this now for 1 hour and 22 minutes. We're getting a lot of engagement here. I appreciate everybody who's looked at this video. I try to keep them right around an hour. We're going over just because it's such a great subject and all of you have been so great in tonight's comments. But teamwork. That's one of the reasons why I do these videos is because I think that you all can help me become a better game designer. You all can help me be a better game publisher. And also things like tonight, the idea just came up. Let's help get subscriptions to other vloggers out there who talk games. Let's help them out. And on that note, if you could go ahead and do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe button, or at least the subscribe button, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you want to hit the bell icon, go ahead and do it. I don't know if you want to hear whenever I post a new video or not, but if you hit the bell icon, from what I understand, YouTube will send you a notification too. But if not, just hit subscribe. Helps build my channel. It really does. Been doing this every Tuesday night thing for now, going on 6-8 weeks now, and I'm going to continue with it. It really seems to be working out well. Every week we seem to have more people watching. We seem to have more engagement, more people commenting, and that doesn't happen without you guys. So I really appreciate that. So I'm going to let everybody go right now. Again, thank you very much for commenting. We had a couple new people come in tonight. Thank you very much for coming in. Again, my channel is really nothing without you. I know a lot of people say that, but I really do mean that because you guys gave me a great idea tonight. So maybe out of this idea, we could help other creators and other vloggers go ahead and get subs. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. Good night, everybody. And as my friend Tom says, keep those dice rolling. I'll talk to you guys later.